What is up, everybody? Bandit here for yet another Taco Tuesday. So whenever you start talking about Toyota trucks, a lot of people are quick to point out that what we get here in the United States is not a Hilux. And for the most part, that's true. Here for the last 3 generations of the mid-size truck and the last 2 generations of the full-size truck, what we know of as the Tacoma and the Tundra are not the Hilux. However, the first trucks here in America built by Toyota, known just as the Toyota truck, was technically a Hilux, and they were all built in Japan and everything else. However, these Tacomas and Tundras are built here stateside, either in Texas or in Baja, Mexico. But that's a topic for a different time. So what I want to talk about today is the Hilux and kind of why we don't get that here in the United States. So the Hilux has lived on. You may have seen it in countless Top Gear episodes and overseas if you've been traveling elsewhere. But basically it is a little bit more compact truck, and it basically is meant to fare better on, you know, tighter city streets and everything like that. Here in America, everything is generally a little bit bigger, and that's why we get a different set of trucks. However, I was poking around on the Toyota Australia website, and I found some pretty interesting stuff regarding the Hilux. So the Hilux is configured in different packages and everything, different from how we get our Tacomas and Tundras. So with the Tacoma, if you buy a TRD truck, meaning a TRD Sport or a TRD Off-Road, that is your trim level. However, overseas with the Hilux, when you want, say, a TRD Sport, you get an SR5 and add the TRD Sport package, similar to how you would in a Tundra. I thought this was pretty neat. However, I continued to poke around and I found some more really cool things. So the Hilux, if you haven't seen one recently, they kind of look more like our Highlander. However, you know, it is a body-on-frame truck. It's nothing like a Ridgeline or anything like that. But they come in a lot of different configurations. They do still have the single cab. They do still have an access cab similar to what I'm driving here, and they do still have a full 4-door truck or a double cab. All of those options are really great, and actually with all of those options, you can get those without a bed. So meaning if you wanted to have a purely work truck or a farm truck or a hunting truck or something like that, you could get it without a bed, add your own flatbed, or actually buy a flatbed from Toyota and fix your truck up that way. I think that's really cool. You know, a lot of us, especially living here in the country, a lot of people do end up with flatbed Toyotas, at least that I see, and I think if you could buy those from the factory, I think that'd be a really neat option. Now, obviously most people would go with the bed, but again, it is just nice to have that option out there. Another thing poking around on the website that I saw is that you can actually get a factory winch from Toyota. It is a worn winch, but you can just check the box as you're configuring your truck and you can have a winch. Again, that is not offered here with our Tacomas, and again, I think that would make a really great option. The last thing that really stood out to me while I was messing around on that Toyota Australia website is the fact that you can get one of those basic trucks. They call their basic truck the Workmate. It's kind of below an SR or SR5 trim, but they do call it the Workmate. But you can get the Workmate actually with a lot of off-road capability. So here in the United States, if you want a really good off-road truck, you do have to go with a TRD Off-Road or a TRD Pro. That gets you a little bit better suspension, better underbody cladding and protection, and that e-locker there in the rear that does help you get out of a lot of sticky situations. However, overseas with the Hilux, you can get, say, an SR or Workmate truck with the locking differential and with the larger skid plates and everything else. Again, you can't get anything like that here, and you do have to go ahead and pay a lot more money to get a TRD truck instead of just being able to option all of that off in a lower trim level. Now, the final thing, and perhaps the biggest difference between our Tacomas and the Hilux overseas, is the different engine options. Now, you can get quite a few different gasoline motors in your Hilux, but you can also get a couple diesel options. I believe it's 3 different sizes of diesel options, ranging for different power and different uses of your truck, but all of those engines can be paired with a manual transmission. here in the United States, you can only get your manual transmission truck in a few different configurations. And actually, the truck that I'm in right now, you cannot get a manual transmission in. I have a TRD off-road access cab, and unfortunately, you cannot get a manual transmission in that truck. You'd have to go with the TRD off-road with the double cab with the short bed. So, and that kind of brings us to our next point. I think a lot of the reason we don't get some of these options here with the Tacoma, or even the Tundra for that matter, it does come down to packaging and price. Now, of course, we can't really compare price because it is sold in a different market with a different currency and everything else. But I think for the United States at least, Toyota really tries to simplify the packaging. And what that does is it doesn't rely on your consumers to be quite as educated. Now, I'm not knocking you all. Obviously, we did all buy Toyota Tacomas or Tundras, or perhaps you drive a different vehicle. And after watching a lot of our videos and doing your own research, I'm sure you are very educated. But just for the normal person who doesn't really care that much and just wants a truck to get from A to B and do the job, they really don't care that much, and they don't want to learn that much about the truck. They just want to hop in and go. Now, when you are that kind of person, it really makes sense to kind of market towards those upper trim levels and not really ask too many questions if you're a dealer or a salesman. You know, you kind of push the point where you really need this TRD Sport or TRD Off-Road. See, it has all your amenities, it has your in-tune radio, it has everything you need. Here's your price, out the door you go. And I think a lot of people fall into this trap. Like I said, there is very little consumer education with that, and you just kind of push them in a direction. Most people take the bait, and they do buy the more expensive truck. Now, another reason that comes to mind that Toyota wouldn't have all those options here for the Tacoma is just when it comes down to packaging and streamlining for efficiency. You see, when you have more variations and more different nuances of a certain vehicle or a certain trim level or really anything else, it makes your manufacturing and processes there in the factory a good bit more difficult. You know, not only for just the tooling and everything to put it together, but also for the training of the workers and everything else. Also, having all those extra parts laying around for those options does take up space, and you know, all of that leads to less efficiency. However, when you can streamline your packages, you do achieve manufacturing at a greater efficiency and are able to sell all of that for a more reasonable price. And I think a lot of that comes down to why you see so many of these trucks on the street. You know, whether you want a fairly well optioned truck like I'm driving with the TRD off-road with the technology package, or whether you just want a basic SR or SR5 for your work truck fleet, you know, either one's fine, and either one is fairly affordable. Now, with all that being said, you may be wondering, do I wish I had a Hilux? Well, personally, I would love to see that diesel engine here in my truck, but that's really it. You know, I do like the look of the Tacoma. The Tacoma is a little bit larger in the overall footprint of the truck, and it does make people that are a little bit taller or larger, like myself, it helps you fit in the truck a little bit easier. So personally, I am really happy with the truck. However, I would love to see a couple of those options come over. Like I said, the diesel engine option would be great, and also the fact if you could get a pretty basic truck with all of the off-road hardware, I think a lot of people would really like that. Now, while we're on this topic, it is good to mention that Toyota is not the only one that has different trucks for the U.S. market and for the markets abroad. You know, Nissan has the Nissan Navara overseas, where here we get the Nissan Frontier. This similar thing is seen with Chevy and with Ford. You know, the Ford Ranger hasn't been here in the States for quite a few years. However, overseas it never really left. You know, they are still getting those Ford Rangers overseas. So it's not just Toyota here, and a lot of that has to do with, you know, just we do live in a different market. A lot of the American consumers do have different needs and everything like that. So transitioning here into some more truck news, we're just talking about the Ford Ranger, and actually a new variant of that Ford Ranger has possibly been spied. So these were just spy shots, and I'm not exactly sure where they were taken, but it looks like the Ford Ranger may actually be getting the Raptor treatment. So at least from the pictures that we saw there on those spy shots, it did have a little bit more bulging fenders and everything else. It did look a little bit more aggressive, and it did look to have a little bit different suspension. Now, if Ford would decide to make sort of, I guess they're calling it a Ranger Raptor, you know, with that more off-road presence and more off-road capability, it would go directly up against with the Toyota TRD Pro and with Chevy's new ZR2, and I think that'd be a great form of competition between all of these truck manufacturers for a great off-road truck. In other news, GM was spy testing their next-gen Silverados, and it looks like we will be seeing both a steel bed still remaining in that truck, as well as a diesel option. Both of those were confirmed, one by someone actually running out and sticking a magnet to the truck when they saw it parked, so great job on that person. But also they saw those Silverado mules fueling up at a diesel pump. So it looks like that is confirmed. So our final news story does come from Fiat Chrysler, and it looks like the JL Wrangler prototypes, those next generation Wranglers, have been spied yet again, this time in a two-door variant. So it looks like for the next generation Wranglers, we will be seeing both an unlimited version or a four-door, as well as just the smaller two-door variant, similar to what we have now with the JK Jeeps. You know, those Jeeps haven't gotten an update, and the original JKs did come out in 2007, so they are definitely due for an update. But hopefully we can see those new Wranglers out on the roads here before too long, and hopefully that's another great seller there for Fiat Chrysler. So that pretty much wraps up everything we have to talk about for this week. Thank you all very much again for watching for another Taco Tuesday, and let us know what you think. Would you rather have a Hilux, or are you happy with your Tacoma here in the United States? Thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.